L'Assemblée va...
The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency General Michel Aoun, President of the Republic of Lebanon. I request protocol to escort His Excellency.
Au nom de l'Assemblée générale,
On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to invite General Michel Aoun, President of the Republic of Lebanon, to address the Assembly.
Your Excellency, Mr. Miroslav Lajčák, President of the General Assembly, Your Excellency, Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, Your Excellency, Heads of States of Government, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure at the outset to congratulate you, Mr. President, on your election to the presidency of the General Assembly at the United Nations in its current session. I wish you success in your endeavor. Allow me as well to thank His Excellency, Mr. Peter Thompson, for wisely conducting the work of the previous session. I commend the work of His Excellency, the Secretary General, Mr. Guterres, and his efforts in revitalizing the role of the United Nations. Mr. President, we are today in New York in September. Therefore, we must go back 16 years ago, when terrorism struck this city, claiming the lives of thousands of victims. From this very rostrum, we renew our solidarity with the families of these victims and the families of all victims of terrorism in the world. This tragic event ignited an international war against terrorism. This war has spread and lost its purpose. Its raging fire spread to other countries, especially in the Middle East. And many countries felt this raging fire. Some countries felt it directly, and others bore the burden of the results. It has fed the most heinous forms of terrorism, one that seeks to eliminate humanity, civilization, and culture. It has perpetrated the most heinous of crimes against our people. It spared no civilian, no child, no women, no elderly. It spared no cultural or religious landmark. It also mushroomed and struck the 5 continents, and its means grew bloodier by the minute. Its crimes violated all laws, conventions, and international norms. No one knows where this terrorism will reach and how and when it will end. As the war started in Syria, the situation in Lebanon was destabilized. It was clear that it is an Arab country, and it was supposed to fall in the circle of terrorism. However, Lebanon was able to prevent this fall and this explosion by preserving its unity, despite the severe political divisions it was going through. No one crossed the red line for every civilian, which preserved the unity and security of Lebanon. Despite the fact that some terrorists managed to infiltrate into our towns and cities, they have organized armed cells there. However, Lebanon, with all its forces, was able to eliminate these terrorist cells, progressively. Recently, our army emerged victorious against terrorist organizations of Daesh and al-Nusra and their arms on the borders with Syria and ended their military presence in Lebanon. The burden borne by Lebanon and caused by the ongoing war in Syria largely exceed its capacity. However, the Lebanese people have proven that they are humanitarian and responsible. They have welcomed refugees in their houses, schools, and hospitals. They shared their food with them and their labor market throughout the previous years. And until this very day, thereby increasing drastically the unemployment rate in the country. I would like to point out that more than 1/2 of our public schools operate on a double shift basis in the morning and in the afternoon to accommodate and educate the Syrian children. Your Excellency, the President, Lebanon is a small country, densely populated with limited resources. Its economy has been affected by several crises, to start with the global economic crisis, followed by the regional wars that surrounded the country and prevented it from moving towards the east and the Arab states. States that constitute vital support to Lebanon. Waves of displacements and refugees emerged afterwards, adding a total of 50% to the country's population, which means for every 2 Lebanese citizens, there is 1 displaced or refugee. The population density has increased from 400 persons per square kilometer to 600. A severe overcrowding spread over 10,452 square kilometers. This has deteriorated the economic conditions and has increased the crime rate in its various types. More dangerous is that terrorist groups have taken shelter in refugees gathering areas and camps, transforming them into a fertile terrain, aiming to carry out terrorist activities and claiming the lives of innocent people. Hence, the need to regulate the return of displaced persons to their homeland. This need has become urgent as the situation in most of their first places of residence has settled. There are those who talk about a voluntary return, while we speak about a safe return, and there's a difference. The meetings of the International Syria Support Group have affirmed that return is either voluntary or safe, depending on the reason of displacement. In case asylum is individual and for political reasons, threatening the safety and security of the individual, the return shall be voluntary. This means it is granted for political refugees who themselves decide the timing of the said return. This must be coupled with the acceptance of the host country. As for the current form of the collective asylum in Lebanon, it has happened for economic and security reasons, and as an escape from the dangers of war. Therefore, we call it a displacement and not asylum. It was not coupled with the acceptance of the host country, and it was not limited to an individual asylum. It was rather a form of a population invasion. As for the claim that these people will not be safe if they return to their country, we are all aware that this is a pretext and it is unacceptable. On the one hand, there are around 85% of Syrian territories that have been recovered by the government. And on the other hand, if the Syrian government is reconciling with the armed groups, which it is fighting, and is granting them the freedom to choose between remaining in their villages or moving to other regions. So what do you think the Syrian government would do with displaced people who fled the war? And what happened recently in Lebanon confirms this. Moreover, in the same vein, the displaced people are living in misery and in an unhealthy environment despite all the services provided by the international and Lebanese institutions. It is painful for us to be unable to improve their situation given their great numbers and our limited capacities. There is no doubt that it would be better for the United Nations to assist them in returning to their homeland rather than helping them remain in camps lacking the minimum standards of a decent living. In addition to the Syrian exodus and the foreseen financial collapse of the UNRWA, Lebanon is burdened by the 500,000 Palestinian refugees who have been displaced from their homeland for 69 years now and are still waiting for their return to Palestine. We do not see any serious efforts from the United Nations or the Security Council to implement the two-state solution. On the contrary, the international community, with all its institutions, is unable to compel Israel to stop building new settlements. Violence remains unabated because people with a stolen identity and land cannot be subjugated. Israel's approach to the solution has always been based on military force and violation of rights. Lebanon is a case in point. Israel has always repeatedly violated Lebanese sovereignty and Resolution 1701. During the past few days, Israeli Air Force bombed Syrian territory from Lebanese airspace. Then, a few days later, they carried out an imaginary raid or an illusion raid, breaking the sound barrier above Saida, which caused material damages. Moreover, Israel installs from time to time spying devices in the Lebanese territories. These violations are not new. This is what Israel has been doing for 7 decades now. Records show that there are at least 100 land, sea, and air violations to the Lebanese sovereignty each and every month. Lebanon has been filing complaints to the Security Council, which did not manage to stop these violations. Mr. President, these 7 decades of war with Israel have proven that cannon, tanks, and planes do not bring about solutions or peace. There is no peace without rights, and there is no justice without respect of rights. There is no doubt that the crime of expelling Palestinians from their land and displacing them cannot be rectified by another crime against the Lebanese, by imposing naturalization thereon, and against Palestinians by denying them the right of return. The weakening of UNRWA's role is only a step on this path. It aims at the elimination of refugee status in preparation for their settlement. Lebanon will not allow this to happen. It will refuse having refugees or displaced at any cost. The choice is ours to make and no one else's. All these wars have left deep wounds in the society and among individuals. They have destroyed conscious social thinking and the principles of coexistence, solidarity, tolerance, and acceptance among individuals and groups in the world. Our region has become trapped in a cycle of poverty. It is turning into a hotbed of extremism, thus creating continuously growing crises. Therefore, any solution must be coupled by economic and social measures that are able to achieve growth and improve social conditions for the people in the region, in order to ensure a decent and stable life for the people. I therefore call upon you to seriously consider establishing a joint to establish a joint market to ensure a living in the shadow of freedom. Once again, I call upon you to seriously consider establishing a joint Eastern market to ensure a living in the within freedom. Lebanon itself is a model of diversity. Its people, cultures, and civilizations have always been diverse. They are the result of an accumulation of ancient times, from Aramaic, the language of Jesus Christ, to Arabic, the language of the Prophet, in addition to Phoenician, Roman, Greek, Latin, Persian, and the Nile Valley. Not to forget that the Lebanese people have been bringing Muslims and Christians from different sects together. With the history of war and its repercussions, we have lived peace and its positive aspects. Given our experience in coexistence and our comprehensive culture, Lebanon can be an oasis where the world can meet and engage in dialogue. Mr. President, honorable attendees, after the end of the World War I, the League of Nations was established to maintain world peace. However, it failed, and World War II broke out in less than 3 decades. At the end of the said war, the United Nations was established, with the main objective of peacefully resolving disputes among countries and preventing future wars. However, was it able to achieve this goal? The answer to this question is not difficult. This explosive world around us is the best answer. World War III has taken a new form. It is no longer a war among nations. It is rather a devastating internal war. Many countries have erupted for religious and ethnic reasons, due to extremism and rejection of others' right to exist. As for the division of states into sectarian and ethnic groups, it is definitely not the solution, and it will never prevent wars. On the contrary, this approach would only increase fanaticism, extremism, and conflicts. The solution will only come through intellectual and cultural change. Hence the urgent need for an institution dedicated to providing peace education. This has become crucial noting that only a new culture of peace and forgiveness that teaches the principles of living together, or the what so-called coexistence in which people respect freedom of belief and the right to have different opinions, can face terrorism and create societies capable of establishing peace between people and nations. A culture that brings people together and that contributes to strengthening relations among different societies. A culture that assists in adopting the language of dialogue as a means for conflict resolution. The role of Lebanon, let alone its mission, is launching war against the ideology of terrorism. Being characterized by its pluralistic society, Lebanon is the antithesis of the unilateralism represented by Daesh and its peers. This is the basic effort that the United Nations must undertake. That is, intellectually fighting terrorism, which has no geographic borders. It is an intellectual infection electronically transmitted around the world. Thus, for all the above-mentioned reasons, I propose Lebanon's candidacy to be a permanent center for dialogue among different civilizations, religious and races, as a UN organ. We hope that member states will support Lebanon in its quest when this proposal is tabled, so that we can work together to secure the aspirations of the United Nations as an institution and as nations to seek peace and a decent life for all people in a world of security and stability. Thank you for your attention.
Au nom de l'Assemblée.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank His Excellency General Michel Aoun for the statement he has just given. I ask the representatives to remain seated while we greet the President. Thank you.